It's another episode of Hit the Trolls, Feed the Trolls. I've forgotten the name of our show. And Dempz is here. He's going to be chatting with Thorin and I today about PGL Cluj, and all the conversation online actually for the last week and a bit has been around obviously the lack of some of the bigger teams pitching up at Cluj, some of the issues around prize money and shares with organizations. But the honest truth is there's so many other podcasts who've spoken about this. And also, from what I can see online, the only people who seem to really care about this are people that actually work in the industry. Fans don't seem too bothered. So we're not going to talk about that today. We're actually just going to talk about the playoffs of this event and the 4 teams that we got to see. Because Dempz, what was really cool about Cluj is the fact that we didn't have the Vitalities there, is that we got to see some of the teams that have really interesting stories actually make their way all the way through to that stage. And we got to see them in an arena, which I enjoyed. I thought it was a little bit refreshing. How about you?
I agree. I think there are a lot of teams that I'm cautiously optimistic about for the rest of the season, and getting to see them in the business end of a tournament when there's a little bit more on the line was, like you say, refreshing. I think we got a chance to see a team like MOUZ in a stage environment without maybe some of the vitalities and such in their way. So yeah, I thought it was a good tournament. I really enjoyed it.
I mean, when you consider the 2 teams that were in the final, MOUZ without Shu here with Spinx instead, who, by the way, was not a particularly popular player anyway, even in Vitality. And then obviously Falcons, which even though it retains 1 Falcons player from last year, people were so horny to keep that narrative going that they just suck and everyone's overpaid. The idea those are the 2 teams contesting the final, it was like the haters Super Bowl.
Yeah.
A haters Super Bowl. I actually really like it. Let's start with the team that won, because here's the thing. When Shui got sort of benched, I was furious. I'm a big MOUZ supporter. We've had Dempz on before to talk about MOUZ. I was furious. This was the end of MOUZ. If I'd had one of their shirts, I probably would have burnt it. But the situation was, Shui's gone. That's the end, right? However, this is a team that, for all that time we kept saying they kept choking on the big stage, they suddenly get rid of their glorious IGL Dempz, and now they've lifted a trophy. Were you expecting that?
I don't think I was expecting a trophy lift. Maybe a controversial take. I was expecting, considering Spinx was the guy who came in, I was expecting MOUZ to do okay, honestly. I know Brolan's unproven as an in-game leader, but if you watch MOUZ play, if you've been at LANs and listened to them play, Zershan and Torji talk all the time when MOUZ are playing. Like, they're very vocal players, have a lot of ideas. So I didn't feel like Brolan was going to be left in the lurch to kind of like micro all his players, come up with all the ideas on his own. I think particularly mid-routing, like Torji is probably the guy who talks the most on MOUZ. So I was not expecting them to be completely guff, like first time out. I was expecting at least something from them. And then adding Spinx, you're just adding a guy who's got so much firepower. This guy is such a stud in playoffs of like LAN events, big LAN events. So yeah, I wasn't surprised they were good, but I wasn't expecting a trophy win, especially after the group stage, because they were a little bit shaky in the group stage against the better teams.
A little bit shaky, for sure. And I mean, Thorin, for you with the Shui putting him on the bench, were you surprised by that? Did you see it coming?
No. I mean, I think the reason why that's surprising is, if anything, people would have thought that if he leaves the team, it's because he's actually being purchased and signed to a bigger squad. Like, in fact, actually, I'd even say one of the areas where one of the things, the first thing I said on talk shows is my contacts within MOUZ told me, essentially, it was phrased as everyone wants him out. And they just left it at that. You can imagine, does that mean personality? Does that mean some clash and stuff? All I'll say is this: if you see the recent rumoured news, the rumoured news is he's not even going to any top team. He's just making like a brand new squad and starting from step 0 again with his old mate Ash from years back in Game Allegiance. So if that's even the rumour, that almost implies to me like there is something that happened more than just we had a different decision as to who's going to be the IGL, because what that tends to imply is like other people in the industry have heard stories, or no one's coming and making a bid for this guy. So I could never anticipate that. I mean, they did a very, very good job in MOUZ of selling that whole angle that these are the guys who came from the academy team and they're with their coach from the academy team, and everyone must love it, even though, by the way, that part's always a step too far in every single squad. Suddenly it becomes like, I ship them. They are the best of friends as well. And it's like the fucking Fellowship of the Ring or something. So I never understood why people forced that one. But you would have thought with all the success they'd had, like you only leave to go to a bigger squad. And you never would do like on paper a downgrade as MOUZ. That's the part that makes no sense. Like the weirdest part of it all, as I pointed out on past episodes, is if you just say, can I replace Brolan with Spinx? I'll take a deal all day long. It's a fucking mega deal. The problem is, would I replace Shuhei with Brolan? No, I don't know anyone that would do that. I don't even know if I really believe that Brolan would. And no, pulling up clips when he was 15 years old, going, I one day could see myself being an agile. How far are we going to reach on these narratives, guys? Like, it's not even something he's talked about the last few years, is it? Like, so we're going back to like when he was like a little kid sat on Santa's knee and what do you want for? I'd like to be the IGL one day. Like, it's all like that's got anything to do with this move. So no, and also I do think when you saw this move happen, like, this is why I was kind of surprised people thought they'd be total trash, though. It's like, they are on paper a load of players that are all being HLTV top 20s, including Brawler back in the day. Like, the one thing you could at least get hyped for was, like, maybe they can frag out in the server. With that said, though, the reason why I think it's insane that they won this Cluj event is they had to play 21 maps, guys. This isn't like some land where, you know, the old DreamHack format where you win 2 BO1s, then you're in the semis, you 2-0 someone, all of a sudden you played 6 maps, you won the whole lot. You had to play 21 maps, and even if you play against lesser squads, you get found out eventually. By the way, especially something like raw fragging. And by the way, this team fragged out the whole event. So no, look, there was like a possibility they could be decent. But I don't think anyone actually had them winning the event. Like, I think even before the playoffs, you look at it and you go like, isn't it like FaZe, Eternal Fight, maybe Mongols even? You could maybe keep going more. Like Falcons obviously beat them in the group stage. There was many reasons you wouldn't pick them to win the event, certainly.
Controversial take. Do you think that it just helped that the bigger teams, Dempz, weren't there because their raw firepower was able to kind of get them through? I wonder if we would have had a very different scenario if Roland was having to call against someone like Apex.
100%. I think when you're playing against like kind of the tier below the top tier, like none of these teams are in that like Vitality, Na'Vi, you know, Spirit tier of team right now. 100% the fragging can carry you a lot further than it would otherwise. And on top of that, you don't get to a point where the in-game leader has to make an adjustment because you're losing a game, you're struggling, the stars aren't just clicking on heads. So Brolan wasn't put on the spot to make like an adjustment like that in the middle of the game. Like, I don't think ever. I think, especially with the players he's got, like Xershen's a big playmaker, Torji's a big playmaker. They are, even Spinx, like with aggressive lurks, they're going to bail you out in situations where otherwise as an in-game leader, you might have to make a tough call or you might have to come up with something clever on the fly. So 100% not having the top teams there made life a lot easier for Brolan. And it made life easier for MOUZ in general because, yes, they have like stage problems, obviously. But in general, when they're having these stage problems in the past, it's only against the best teams. It's only against like Vitalities, the absolute like dons of the CS scene. So I think both of those combined like made it so much easier for Brolan. His players were less likely to choke and the firepower could carry them further.
And he did lose to FaZe. I mean, that would, for me, that would always be the benchmark, because how did you play against CadiaN? You did lose in this tournament to FaZe. Maybe not in the playoffs, but like that does give me a little bit of cause for concern, because I think MOUZ fans are going to be celebrating Thorin. They have a trophy, but the Cluj performance, even the final, I mean, it was good, but I don't think it was for me, it wasn't convincing enough to think this is a team that's now going to be able to come into bigger tournaments and punch with the big guys in the top 4, top 5.
Well, the toughest thing is, if you want to give congratulations to MOUZ, you almost begrudgingly are forced to then do it to Falcons as well, because actually I agree. That actually could have been like a 3-1 either way for both teams. It could have been a 3-2 game. Could have actually been an even better match. And I do think, actually, if you look at the tournament, 1 second before MOUZ won the final, the two teams that were going to get all the props at this tournament probably were Falcons and then maybe FaZe, if FaZe had won the 3rd place game. And the other issue with your MOUZ is, the two teams, like, look, to beat Mongols isn't bad. They are a scalp, but they've also never done anything in the playoffs, unfortunately. The two teams that give you like the status from this event is FaZe and is Eternal Fire, and they're not teams actually that you played and beat, unfortunately. So even though you won the event, you didn't even really get the maximum sort of clout from winning the event that you could. You sort of took what looked like the weaker bracket, especially after you won the first game, and then just sort of stumbled over and you won the event. But at the end, I also do notice as well, I feel like if there had been some sort of like breakout player from Brawlers and IGL, the content creators would have been all over this. You'd have had like breakdowns of like a new strat they brought or some sort of a play. I even think if you look how he played, it actually looked for real. Like they almost were a team that were like, look, we're not going to try anything fancy. Like he essentially just played like he was still an entry player or something. Like he would just like sit around mid on Dust 2 and just try and take duels with people like NiKo would or something in Falcons. Like that didn't even particularly look like he's masterminding, StarCraft game of, and send the troops out here. They bring. There was none of that as far as I can tell. And I'm with you as well, Dempz. Like when you have people that are essentially the tits at their roles, like Spinx, Xertion, mate, they already can do about 25% of the strat from their part of the map because they're already the guys that win all the rounds. They already know how to do the pressure lurk. Yeah, exactly. So, like, it's not like he didn't do anything. I don't think he can win tournaments without doing anything, but he essentially did have like the training wheels on for this one, and he wasn't fighting the absolute best teams. Because the other thing as well, I'm with you. I hate that narrative that just goes, MOUZ just chokes on stage. No. Eternal Fire and Mongols choke on stage. They get onto a stage bigger than like a foot tall and with more than 10 people looking through the keyhole of a broom closet. They can't possibly win a match. The difference is, here's the analogy you need for last year's MOUZ. MOUZ was Andy Murray. If you put them against anyone normal, they'll fucking win and they'll be the best team. They've done that, by the way, and won the big lads. The problem is, though, if you put them against like the greatest players of all time, they'll probably lose. In fact, it's most likely will. And unfortunately, when you look back in history, a bit like Andy Murray, you'll just go, Canada was supposed to lose most of those, actually. Those are just like the best. Those players are just the shit. Like, no, the joke is only they can beat each other. So that's the real bomber here. I almost feel like either you had to play FaZe directly, or the bigger one would be, it doesn't have to be on, but give us one of those teams. Give us like Zemu with Vitality or Spirit and Donk. One of these teams. That scalp is worth so much if you get that win.
The Spinx move, and if you're looking at MOUZ now as a team, because this is the only chance we've had to see this lineup, and now we're going to sort of move into the next iteration of events building up to the major. Does MOUZ do much after this? Because for me, I worry, Dempz, that they need, I think they're going to need one more piece changed. I don't know if Spinx was the magic one to push in.
That is a really tough question. On paper, you've obviously had a pretty big firepower upgrade because, like, if I'm MOUZ, I say, Brolan, you're taking all the shit spots. We're letting Spinx do, his aggressive lurking on T side. Xertion is like our kind of entry player on T side. You've got like the roles all kind of mapped out there. My big question marks are, I really like Torji as a player because he nuts up and makes plays when MOUZ are down in rounds and when MOUZ are struggling. Problem is, he does also miss those shots that make you wince, and you're like, oh my God, like no other top AWPer misses that shot. And so, like, do I want to upgrade Torji? In an ideal world, yes. Is he also quite a big part of the successes they have? Yes. Like, I think it was against Astralis. He literally bailed them out of that Inferno, like got them into overtime and won the map in overtime. Like, and then beyond that, where are you making the change? That's the thing with MOUZ is like, I think getting Spinx was a massive coup for them. Massive coup. Because Spinx is one of the absolute best players in the world. He's one of the absolute best riflers, especially like in his role.
Could argue he's overqualified for their team, mate.
Yeah, 100%. I think he is. I think he's like, I mean, if you're a Spinx, I think it's like G2, Vitality. Like, these are the teams you go to, the teams that are going to like not just win the odd tournament, but look to be the top team in the world, winning tournaments back to back. So I just don't see where MOUZ can go for a piece change is the problem, I think. And are they going to do stuff this year? I wouldn't be surprised if the peak is slightly higher than the previous MOUZ, but yeah, hard to see beyond that, especially on the basis of this tournament because there weren't the top teams in attendance.
Your thoughts on that one, Thorin?
If you just look at the current next tournament, so in Pro League, it's only FaZe that's missing, basically. Like, that's going to be a hard Swiss system to even get out of, by the way. It's debatable you'll be like a 2-2 team. And then if you really want to see where like the universe is like, well, time to prove it, go look at that Blast Open group that they've got. That Blast Open group, that group alone is a better field than the entire PGL field. It's not. It's the one that has like all the killers in it. So they're going to be tested actually pretty much right out the gate. Like they have no even warm-up time. And then people are forgetting as well. We're now doing the thing where we're now rewriting history that like, oh, well, since none of the players did leave, I guess now this is just MOUZ forever. It's like, the problem is, if we're going to do the whole brawl and gets a season to bed in, what happens at the end of the season if then people do come knocking again? What if then Yimfat is suddenly going to go to another squad or someone's going to purchase him, etc.? Like these moves, I don't think you can hold them off forever. And also, yeah, I'm with you. The problem is, this is where the messaging around Brolan has muddied all the waters. You're either lying and he's not your long-term plan for an IGL and you're just doing this as a stopgap. But then it's going to look really stupid if you kick him and get an IGL, whoever it is, because then it's like, well, then why did you say it was because you wanted wanted Brawler and his vision fit your style. And also in that way, haven't you sort of like double fucked him out of his job? You've gone, hey, give up your role to someone even better at it. It's like, okay. And now, sorry, your role's the role you're currently doing, well, you're not the best at that, are you? So get the fuck out the door. It's like, that seems pretty outrageous in terms of how to treat someone. So I actually think they're somewhat a little bit painted into a corner here. If they were a normal team, if this was like a G2 or a Vitality, you just want to stick with the roster. Yeah, if you give it like 2 seasons, by the end of the second season, maybe you're really good. But I also think if you've looked at the history of people who were like star riflers who become in-game leaders, nobody does it within 3 months. It's just not a thing. You might have something like this where you trip over and win a tournament, but you won't actually, eye test wise, look like you're a masterful leader who can control the game, figure out how to use all your. There's so many skill sets you develop in there that I think it would be unreasonable to even expect it. Like, all you need to know is, if Shocks can't do it, if NiKo can't do it, if Device can't do it, if Twist can't do it, come on, like, it's just at this point in time, who can? Who actually can just swap and immediately be really good? I think it's like an inhuman task to ask someone, because in my opinion, IGL is a role that almost by default has to have years of experience. Yeah. That's why even people like the Shoeys of the world, even if they have the potential, it takes them a year or two themselves to level up, and they've been doing the role for years.
The question marks are going to stay around MOUZ, but we are going to move on because we're looking at all 4 teams that made the playoffs. And this is the team that you either love to hate, or you've been running around on the internet saying that Zonic he's been forgiven, everything's fine, they made the finals, now it's all been proven that he was right. So whichever side of the fence you lie on, I don't really care, because I just like talking about Falcons because it's always an interesting conversation. What did we think about Falcons here at Cluj? I mean, I did not have them on the list. I did not have them to make the finals, Dempz. That was not something I expected. But I did expect them to do reasonably well considering the field.
I'm telling you, I think this is a fake result for Falcons, honestly. Dexter played way better than he has for like all of CS2. And I was a massive Dexter fan in Go. I thought that guy was such a good AWPer, and I thought he was like massively overlooked. But like, he's just not been the same player in CS2. His style does not suit CS2, I think. He's such a risky player that relies on his mechanics to bail him out. He took such a long break and then came back and his mechanics weren't the same. Like, they're so reliant on NiKo. That guy has to be like the best player in the world every day, I think, for them to do well. Tessis has been playing really well, to be fair to him. I think Tessis has overperformed, but like, I'm still not big or convinced on this Falcons team. Like, the same kind of things we were saying for MOUZ. It's a weak field overall. Like, I mean, who did they beat? They didn't beat anyone that's going to make you like turn around and say, oh my God, like maybe Falcons are legit. Like, okay, yeah, they beat FaZe and Astralis and MOUZ. Like, they did beat all of the like good teams that were here, but I'm not convinced. I'm really not convinced by Falcons.
I love the way you were like, who did they beat? They didn't. I was like, FaZe. They beat FaZe, Dim. That's a big deal in my books.
FaZe aren't exactly like the tits right now themselves. Like, they've got some issues. I think FaZe will be really good, but they're not really good right now. Like, they're like, you know.
Problem with that is what you've discovered there is actually the downside of CS, which is this is just why we can't have nice things, guys. Even though pretty much everyone agrees, almost every single roster move, minus Shuhei plus Spinx move, which on paper is an upgrade of a player, but you've downgraded the role. Every other top team basically did a move that made sense in the roster mania, but the top scene actually looks worse now. Like, essentially, when you're like, well, who did they beat? Who's there, mate? There's only Vitality and Spirit could be there for them to beat. Like, they beat Eternal Fire, who everyone's telling me is like the new top 5 team. They're supposed to be like win a tournament soon. FaZe is everyone's hyped by that move. Everyone thought that team could be number 1 again. They beat those are 2 playoff teams. They beat MOUZ, who won the tournament in the group stage. Like, there's no one else to beat. That's the problem. Like, the only team they didn't beat was a ranked ones, Mongols, but Mongols never played them, unfortunately. Mongols went out too early in the playoffs. So it's also, unfortunately, the nature of this tournament, isn't it? I'm with you. Like, I do think the problem with this event is no matter how much you tell people, remember the top teams weren't here and the prize money, like at the end, they probably wouldn't have put that prize money if they knew these teams were going. Your brain still sees the $1 million. Your brain still goes for the stage, and you still see when you beat FaZe, you go to the fight, and your brain still sort of gives them like the status that they probably didn't fully earn. Because here's the thing, when I look at Falcons here, even if they'd have won that final, I think I would have just said, like, it's more like what Eternal Fire do. It's like, okay, it's like that line from fucking Django Unchained, isn't it? Like, before you had my curiosity, now you have my attention. It's like, now I'm ready to get interested. Before it was like, can you do anything? You know, you had some matches where it's like, well, we almost won. Now you've actually got a couple of like the medium scalps. There actually aren't that many big scalps at the moment in CS, like I say. The problem is, though, no one's really going to believe in the team until you do face like Vitality, Spirit, Navi even, that would be a great one to face at this point in time. I'd love to see that game as well. And the obvious other angle as to, well, for me is this, is the reason why is the NiKo factor will work if you don't play those teams, because actually NiKo is better than all the star players of all those other teams. The point is, though, we don't know that when you play the Rops and Zemu Vitality, that will be enough to win you the game. I don't think it will be enough when you play against Donk, although, by the way, I'll certainly be interested to see how that narrative of NiKo counters Donk, let's see without G2, let's see the match. So if anything, it just hypes me up to watch those games. I actually want to see them come. Let's run it back.
Do you think it's the same? I mean, it's the same question I asked about MOUZ, and I would say it now with Falcons. They were just really lucky. They didn't have the top teams, and they have way more firepower than any of the other teams that were sitting there, and that can kind of lead you all the way into a grand final. I'd argue that is what happened with Falcons.
Oh, the saddest thing is, I want to just say, again, I want us to be like, no, what they discovered was actually the way that they're playing train is unfortunately, those two teams just fragged the fuck out in loads of those games. For real. You don't want to say it because you don't want noobs to hear and know that, yes, you just shoot them in the head, right? You want to be, no, you fool. It's like American football. There's all strats and good. Actually, this tournament was actually a DM. It was people just shooting each other.
Yeah. There's so many of the games, it was just watching NiKo, DM his way around the map, or Zershan doing it, or And also, it is a bit more true in CS2 that firepower wins you games.
True. Yeah,
it is a bit more true. So, It
did feel a bit like a palate cleanse, though. So for me, it was fun to watch because it was just fragging out, shooting. There was something about it that was just I don't know. I quite enjoyed being on my couch watching that whole thing and being like, this is
refreshing.
Fun. Yeah, it's refreshing. I haven't seen a lot of these teams. I'm having a good time watching all of this. I mean, that for me was the big selling point of PGL Cluj. It does suck that the big teams weren't there, but it gave you something different. Falcons, I didn't believe in this lineup at the beginning of the year. It felt to me like and we've spoken about this on previous episodes, it was oh shit, we didn't get what we wanted again, second year running. How fast can we get a core to make sure we can get into events, right? That's kind of, I feel quite strongly that still is the case. I think Dexter still has a giant question mark over his head and needs to be concerned about a Manassi or another AWPer becoming available. So is it going to be enough for them, though, to get on a stage, to come second? As much as we might say, oh, well, it wasn't good enough for them, there is a bit of a stage buff, I suppose, that comes with it, that kind of gives them a bit of a false bravado, maybe, Dempz, that they can use moving into Pro League or some of the other events.
You know what's funny is I would almost argue the opposite. I would almost argue that particularly in that final, I think some of the weaknesses with Falcons got exposed, where it was okay, so NiKo can't hard carry us. TeSeS doesn't have he had a banger map on Mirage, but he doesn't have 2 or 3 banger maps in the series. Kixan is awful, all series long, as an individual, and I don't think the calling was particularly good either. I thought it kind of actually exposed the issues with Falcons. Up until that final, I probably would have agreed with you. I would have been like, oh my God, TeSeS is balling out. Dexter's back. NiKo's fragging. If that's our firepower trio, yeah, we can cook. We can actually, maybe grab some upset wins against the best teams. But then the final came along and you said earlier it wasn't a convincing final. I thought it was pretty convincing for MOUZ, to be honest with you. I thought the only map where I was funnily enough, was when Falcons got banged out on Dust 2. I actually thought they were quite unlucky in the first half. They lost a lot of clutches, got their economy in a bad spot. On a different day, they win 1 or 2 of those clutches. Dust 2's way closer. But yeah, I don't know. I actually thought that the grand final, I think, exposed some of Falcons' problems. Maybe if you're within the team, you're like, oh, great, grand final, first final for the organization. It's brilliant. But I don't know. For example, I think someone like NiKo will probably be walking away from that thinking about some of his teammates these guys aren't quite good enough to do it at the very, very top.
Is he regretting his move yet, Thorin?
Here's the problem. This can't be revealed yet, so I can't say what way. But let me just put it this way. This move was always going to happen, and it was going to happen from a long time ago. And it wasn't, unfortunately, how it was billed. It's he got to the end of the season, and it was 1 more year, NiKo. And he's oh, sorry, guys. I have to... There was no option to go back. One, it was built into what happened when he didn't go the first time. That time, suppose he really was out the door. And then he had to actually say, G2, can I stay? In some awkward move. And they were even well, fuck, we've actually already planned to kick JKS. We don't, I guess, why not, right? But the difference was there was no option this time. So, first of all, I think mentally he must already have shipped the idea months and months back. It's why if you don't get what the analysts were sort of trying to say the last season, that was an ultimate example that sometimes winning the smaller trophies isn't actually the same as being really elite, because G2 was a dead team the whole time they had that roster as far as I know. So that was actually an example of the dead team buff where people just go, what's the point in arguing? I'm not even going to fucking be here in 2 months. Yeah, fuck it. Well done. Like, that shot me in the head. Brilliant. We won the game. Like, that was what was going on. Like, it's why I don't even think, if you notice, they were that sad when they lost the major. Mate, that team on paper should have been like, we win the major from this point onwards. They just sort of looked at it, well, whatever. We gave it the best shot, didn't we? Tell you what, you did all right, Snacks. I fuck with you. Just won't be playing with you anymore. It was like that vibe. There wasn't like, what are we doing? We've ruined it all. Like, that's what you would have been doing normally if you get to that point like that. NiKo does that when someone loses a 1v1 in the normal Swiss system of a tournament. So, no, if you look, right, that's at the moment, I think even NiKo has the expectations set very reasonable for season 1. He knows he is joining Falcons in that sense. Like, if you notice, he didn't actually seem as fiery in the wins or the losses in this tournament. He maybe got emotional when the crowd chanted for him, but aside from that, he actually seemed to me like very level-headed, which is not something I would normally have described NiKo as. I do see him as like a little bit of a rager. Just I see it in a very earnest way. I don't think he does it in a malicious way. I think it's just who he is. He literally does the cliche, wears his heart on his sleeve, doesn't he? Which I think people appreciate. So I don't think he regrets it totally. And also, I'll add this as well. The mega positive if you're Falcons about this is finally you actually can start, if you want to compare this to what they've done with all the Saudi money in other sports and football, you can now compare this to what they always wanted Falcons to be, which is because you have NiKo and you have a couple of other pieces, now you can get that extra piece you need second season, next year, whatever it might be. That's now plausible. Before, you were always stuck in the position of like, even if you got an all right piece, why am I going to join when you haven't got the NiKo? You haven't got the Monacy type player. Like now, you basically could probably get that player. And in fact, wins like this give you the chance where they think, just like NiKo will, well, the difference is when I join the team, it gets way better because they've got me. You could now see yourself as the player joining the team that's the superstar AWPer. And wouldn't we win tomorrow? Wouldn't we actually immediately be like, right, with Vitality and these other people like that? So I also think that aspect's pretty good. Here's the thing. I'll go the other way. I don't agree at all when people are like, I thought the team would do nothing. It's like, bro, one of my favorite teams to watch last year was Heroic. Like, I actually thought they were one of the most fun dark horse teams. The problem was they had Nerds and he had to super carry the game. So what they did is they upgraded Nerds to NiKo, one of the only upgrades you could ever do over Nerds, by the way, assuming Donk isn't joining. And then you, like, at worst, shush to make is a side grade. And for experience, it's an upgrade. So to me, there was at least something to cook with here. The problem is, though, yes, this isn't the same as making, like, the final of Cologne or kind of Itza or something. Like, I still need to actually see a real result to know you can be something at this tournament. Right now, you're probably just an upset merchant. Like, the difference is, if you now play in this EPL and you get drawn on, like, a 1-2 game against someone, it could be a Spirit or someone, they have to at least consider you might knock them out the tournament now, as opposed to like, do we win in 2 or 3, which would have been the feeling before.
I feel like you're talking about cooking. I mean, if we were cooking, I think Falcons is like the sorbet that you might have between courses where like, it's cool. They'll change up the flavor a little bit. Maybe they'll make you more excited for the next match, but you're not going to talk about the sorbet you had between mains and desserts when the game is over. Is that kind of going to be their spot till the major? Because that is now obviously what's coming. Or based on what we saw, I thought at the Shanghai major, what we saw from Heroic, if we take that core, add a NiKo, like Thorin said, Dempz, I mean, can they be something? Can they be the upset merchants? Or is it not going to be enough?
I mean, I think they can definitely be best of the rest for sure. Outside of like the top, 3, I would say there's a pretty clear top 3. And outside of that, they can be the best of the rest. Can they do much more than that? It's hard to say. It's so hard to say. I think they will live and die by NiKo. I think that's basically this iteration of Falcons will live and die by NiKo. Magisk is not a hard carry per se anymore. Like, he's a fantastic role player. He's such a good glue guy, but he's not a hard carry. TessS, I've been impressed actually with TessS's peak, and he's doing really well as second fiddle to NiKo, but again, he's not a mega superstar. So I think this team is going to just live and die by NiKo. And look, if NiKo can have like an IM Cologne 23 performance, then yeah, this team can go really far. Genuinely, I think they can, because NiKo's peak is that high. That guy is so good. And I think a lot of people in CS2, especially new fans, kind of underappreciate how good NiKo is. Like, he is up there with the Zywus and the Donks. Like, that's how good this guy is, especially at his peak. So, like, with a decent foundation and you sprinkle in a little NiKo on top, like, continuing the cooking metaphor, yeah, like, they can do something, but you will live and die by NiKo, I think.
I do like how earlier we were like, CS2, it's more in depth. There's lots of strategies. There's lots of thought process. But actually, it's NiKo go click heads. That's really what we need.
Very much.
That's one of the best ingredients and recipes in the game. Absolutely.
But the thing is, he's also a super vocal mid-round player, and I think he's elevated. Like, I think some people have been giving Kicksan a lot of credit for the way this Falcons play. Dude, he's got NiKo. He's one of the best mid-round players like ever, and he's super vocal, and he will just call in the mid-round. So, like, you don't understand. This guy's not just clicking heads. He's also probably calling a lot of these mid-rounds, man. He's probably calling a lot of these mid-rounds.
We're just going to benefit Kicksan as well, I think, down the line. Okay, so let's now get into... This is actually what I wanted to talk about, which I think sums up Cluj really well. I'm more interested in talking about that third place playoff game than what I was about first or second.
Okay. Fucking Normie
no
over
ways.
here.
Yeah, not a real fan, man. Get out.
I know.
Yeah, these two teams were making... So, at first, let's just talk about the bigger picture, the third place playoff, because I posed a question on X. I loved it. But I also understood that there were points involved, there was prize money involved, there was a little bit of pride involved. I thought there was a lot riding on that third place for the teams that were playing. I put it out there and it was very split, like a 50-50 kind of. A lot of people really enjoyed it as well. They were like, so much better than a show match. But there were a lot of people who were like, nah, man, this is dumb. Who cares? No one cares. The teams don't care. What do you gents think about having a third place playoff match in a tournament?
Here's what's funny. This actually is a classic thing that used to exist in Counter-Strike when we had these single elim tournaments. What we'd do is it would just be for prize money. It would be to decide who comes third, who comes fourth. And oftentimes, even back then, there might be an all right amount of money. Like, let's say first place was 20,000. The difference between like third and fourth might be like $3,000, $2,000 or something. So even though if you all sat down and you went, wait a minute, we didn't win the tournament, but we would each get like 200 more if we won this. If you did that, in theory, it should be able to go, right, okay, yep, battle, put the armor on, let's go to battle. The problem is what used to happen routinely is exactly what happened in this match here, which is think about the two teams that came to the third place match. So you had FaZe, they're coming off losing a semi-final. They thought they were going to win. We thought we were going to win the whole tournament from here on out. Especially, by the way, when Mongols goes out, Eternal Fire was already beaten by Falcons. They've done all our work for us. The title's ours. By the way, at worst, we're coming second. We're making the finals at least. So the problem if your FaZe is like, fuck. Right, well, now you have to play a third place game. Whatever. You do it, we lose. Who gives a shit? Then you look at Astralis. They had no business even being in the semis. Like, they were playing awful in the whole tournament. They made the semis somehow. Now they go to the third place game. They've got everything to play for. They can beat one of the biggest scalps in the tournament. By the way, a scalp that MOUZ himself didn't even get. They can get more points. They need points desperately. They're going to go to the big tournaments and sometimes not even make playoffs. So the problem is that is what used to always happen in the third place game, Tech Girl. You would get the team that was the essentially disappointed favourite would go, fuck it, just phone it in. And the team that it was a miracle they even make the semis. It was their World Cup. They were playing like, oh my God, I'm playing against, and you could be, by the way, you could be playing anyone at one point. So you could be playing Neo or bloody Forest or somewhere. You'd still get the win somehow. So unfortunately, the problem is this. Even if you say there's PRS points on the line, there's more money on the line, it's still important. The fans are watching. Somehow, if you're like the competitor that is there to win the tournament, in your brain, as soon as the switch that goes, you can win the tournament is turned off, I don't think you ever get peak performance. So even though, look, the first map delivered like a motherfucker, that was a great one. I did feel like after that, the rest of the series for me, I didn't feel like it had the same juice. I think people thought this was going to be like some crazy barn burner. The first map was epic. After that, it kind of felt like FaZe just kind of they were just on cruise control in that game. It was kind of sad. Like, I just refuse to think about the past majors. If that was them in the quarterfinal of a major after map one, I feel like you see a different team, So I can only speculate. Maybe it'll be different when we have the even better fields and we do this format. Maybe people will actually fight tooth and nail for the third place decider. But even though, look, I'll say this, it's better than a show match. I just don't know that it ever lives up to sort of it's another playoff match, which people kind of hope it is because of the points aspect. I also think, unfortunately, same with prize money, your brain can't really think about those things while you're in a game. If you're in a game, you want to win it or you want to win it based on your own motivation. You can't really be going if we win this round, I get more money. Your brain, I don't think the human brain works that way, unfortunately.
I think it's nice for fans who are there, right? If they're in the stadium, they get to see, maybe granted they don't see their favorite team play to the best of their ability, but if they've made finals day, they do still get to see a FaZe, right?
You also got two of the best teams to have some bullshit show match on stage.
Yeah.
You've got CadiaN and CadiaN and the people playing up to the crowd, and it's all the favourites anyway. Those people are super famous people around the world in every crowd, so that helps. That part certainly helped the match.
For sure. now that you brought out CadiaN, I mean, that was something that kept coming up, right? For Astralis.
I thought he's your mate. He's your mate. And
yeah, why are you roasting him? Jeez.
I need to be very clear that if I'm giving you a
Okay.
hard time, you're probably my friend. It's when I'm nice to you that you should be worried.
Right, okay.
So here's the thing, right? Astralis played like ass building into the playoffs.
Okay.
I was kind of I didn't think it was very good. I had a bit of a chuckle. And then they get into the playoffs. And here's my thing. And I mean, I'm going to say, I think CadiaN is, you talk about a crowd buff. He finds a way. And I saw this, I believe this with Heroic as well. For some reason, you put him in a stadium and that guy just elevates his team times 100 all of a sudden. It was like a different team, Dempz, that came into that arena.
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of it, honestly, with Astralis was on Yabby. That guy looked like prime Yabby again all of a sudden. And he is... like his first bullet accuracy is insane anyway. Like first kill, that guy's getting it like 9 times out of 10. But he was doing that thing where he strings it into a multi-kill, which he was just not doing the whole of his time in Astralis. Like we saw what the Yabby that kind of elevated Heroic and kind of took them over the edge and made them into, we can actually win tournaments. Yeah. We saw that Yabby again here. And I thought he was a massive part of the reason Astralis was so elevated in the playoffs. He was like 1.30 or something for the playoffs, like mad impactful lurks constantly. Yeah, I thought it was a lot of it was on Yabby for the playoff improvement, to be honest.
By the way, of all the people, you think about how MOUZ still gets it. You have the fucking guy, the ROG teams used to get it. You all choke on stage, bro. It's just down. This guy is like a generational choker at this point.
Yeah,
it's crazy. He can't even like trip over and have a good playoffs. I don't know what the deal is. It's mental in it. That's why I'm actually genuinely shocked they finished third. He still just was a complete ghost in the playoffs. It doesn't even make sense.
He was all right on that Mirage game. And even then he lost them some rounds in overtimes, being mega baity, so passive, like waiting for someone to walk into his crosshair. And like, and even then, he was terrible this playoffs again. Yeah.
Do you think that there are Astralis fans out there who falsely believe that their team is now on the up and up again based on this result?
I think they're on the up and up, if I'm honest. Maybe the first up. Not
so
like
you're
2
that
ups.
Astralis fan,
They're like
Dempz.
1 up. Yeah, I am. No, God, no, trust me. God, no. No, I'm a massive fan of Stare. I think that guy's legit. I think he's really good. No, I actually think this Astralis, like at the base, there is something to work with. Like you've got Device and he's still solid. He's still good. He's not prime Device, but like he has flashes. He has games. And maybe if they can improve as a team around him, he can get back to a more like consistently, world beating type of player. I think Stare's legit. That guy has shit rolls, frags out of his mind, was nuts this playoffs as well alongside Yabby. Yabby, when he's on, amazing player. The big problems are Stown is just dog every playoffs. Like Thorin says, generational choker. Like his HLTV top 20s have pretty much all been built on just farming group stages. And he farms group stages, he's really good, but in playoffs, really completely different player. And then CadiaN with the rifle individually, that guy is missing frags I would get, and I'm shit. Like he genuinely, it's actually shocking that a professional player would miss some of the frags he misses with the rifle. So I actually think there is a little something to work with there for Astralis. And I do think they are like creeping in the right direction.
The problem is, you notice he just didn't give any specifics. Like, the difference is, I don't think they're going to come last in every tournament. Like, if you break down the players like that, Device, by the way, can still be good. And we actually have a dearth of really good AWPers in this game. So, like, the joke is on his day, he could probably still be like the 5th best AWPer in the world. So it's not outrageous. Then you have... I agree with Stare, by the way. He's actually, this is what's sad, because everyone just looks at like the Stabby and Device angle and then now CadiaN, he's overshadowed so much. People don't realize this isn't even clearly the role he would play in a different team. But even if you wanted him to play this team, like put it this way, I would take this deal tomorrow, rain for Stare into fucking FaZe, and then let's just go, mate. Let's just fucking win some tournaments. This guy's cooking with the roles he's got. And by the way, he clearly could in an all-Danish lineup just be like the star rifler himself. You could just give him those spots. So I'm very impressed with how he performs. Device can be good, but obviously he has his own reasons as to why he's hit and miss with his injury, etc., or his illness, or whatever you want to say. And with Yon Yabby, when he plays in his game, he was a great impact player in the old Heroic. The problem is Stown just doesn't turn up, and CadiaN is actually dreadful as an individual player, like really fucking bad.
Really
We're not
bad.
even talking about like you take the shit. First of all, he doesn't even do that. Like he still like calls shit around himself sometimes. And then secondly, I don't know that his calling's particularly good. I keep saying whenever I was watching this tournament run from this team, the craziest thing I don't understand is the big edge you should have is you're all from the same country. So since you're all Danish and most of you have connections playing with each other for quite a while now, you'd actually assume that classic Danish team play would be there where you play off each other and like every time you're in like a man disadvantage, you like set up the crossfire to get the kill or you push in together. They don't have that in this team. Like what's weird is it's actually just individuals playing, and if enough individuals turn up, again, like we were saying about CS, if you shoot people, you can win some rounds. But like, I think this is a team where, like, for example, I think this sort of team would just get destroyed by someone like Spirit if they played them. They get torn apart by a real team that had fragging. Yeah, I'm scared.
Even for breakfast, man.
I'd be really scared for this squad. So yeah, in light of the fact that there's so much variance now between maybe like positions 4 and 9 in the world, yeah, if you put them on the right day, like by the way, maybe they could have beaten Mongols in the opener as well. You know what I mean? Like, there's certain teams they could maybe get. Oh, they obviously did in that one. But the thing I don't get is how are they supposed to actually beat a top team? The difference is I wouldn't even have them as an underdog to beat the top team. I feel like they'll just convincingly get crushed.
I don't think they make playoffs if the top teams are in the mix, to be honest.
They feel like a borderline team to me. That's why I say I don't know how far you want to go with this. If you want to say they're the team that in a Swiss system goes to the 2-2 game, yeah, that sounds plausible. I don't know that I'd have them making many playoffs. And if they do, I mean, this is about the best possible chance to do something, the players that they had here. Even then, by the way, it actually underwhelms you a little bit. If you want to say Astralis was here, then, bro, they should have won that MOUZ semi-final. They should have been in the final.
What does Astralis do next, though? Because if they decide to make a change, they've limited themselves. I mean, they've gone through all the Danish players. I'm sure there's more, but they are kind of limited with what they can pick and choose from, Dempz.
Oh my god, yeah. I don't know where they go either. If you want to stay all Danish, like you say, you are very limited. I mean, I can't think. The obvious swap to me is just get CadiaN out and get an in-game leader in that can actually shoot with a rifle.
Okay, yeah. Let's have a fun one. Who's the in-game leader you bring in?
Honestly, if I'm Astralis and like, you know, we go the rest of the season and we flop the major or whatever, if Shuey is still available, I say fuck it. We go English and we get Shuey in and we just give it a go.
Okay.
Because like CadiaN is so bad as an individual. Like you say, I don't think his calling is working out that well. But Yabi and Stown, and at this point, the rest of Astralis are used to like a bit more of a chaotic and loose, maybe isn't quite the right word, but you know what I mean? It's quite heavy on the mid-roundy style, which I think Shuey suits, and I think Shuey could probably do better than CadiaN at this point. I would just say, fuck it. Like, I don't think we can stay Danish anymore. I think that ship has sailed. Like you say, you've gone through the whole Danish scene at this point, unless you're getting some unknowns, which I don't think Astralis would ever do. Like, fuck it, we just have to go English and just get a real in-game leader. And Shuey is available and really good.
So
well, maybe available.
Maybe available. Maybe he's leading that weird little
Gentlemates
French
or whatever the hell it's called.
What is happening there? Here's something that I suppose fans don't really know about, and I don't really know much about it, but I wonder, can Astralis actually move away from a Danish lineup? Because my understanding is a lot of their sponsorship, a lot of their money, a lot of their support comes from the fact that they're this Danish team. So suddenly, if they move away from having Danish players, do they not lose a lot of the financial backing that comes with being Astralis?
I think you have to stay Danish.
Seems like it, yeah. The problem is you've built it too much into the branding of the team, essentially, haven't you? And also, to me, I think it would just be such an admission of what we've just implied, that you've just fucked over the entire Danish scene, that either nobody will join your team, or even worse, like you're in a scenario where, like, wouldn't it be a crazy admission to go, oh, I signed the 2 best Danish players from Heroic. I've still got Device, but I can't field a 5-man Danish lineup that can do anything in Counter-Strike. Like, well, what that would imply, you've sort of like reverse GM'd the squad from the best in the world, maybe of all time, to you can't even have 5 Danish players in the server. And then also, there's even angles that people don't even seem to appreciate, which is like, if you think of some of the potential talents you could sign, Zyphon's one, he was in your academy system years ago. That looks stupid that you're now bringing him back years later. And then the other one for me is this. That's why also they've checkmated themselves with the names on paper. The on-paper roster is why you can never make a change. Because I'll tell you, the first person I would cut tomorrow, if not CadiaN, right? CadiaN Fragile is just obvious. You need that to make the other pieces work. Are you going to cut down after you signed him for millions of dollars? You went through all that shit to do it. By the way, you also kicked the other person who plays his role, who's amazing, Blame F, to do so. So you're presumably not getting him back. Like, again, you've kind of checkmated yourself on this one. And then the obvious one I've always thought about this team that just shows that they've always been in a weird place the last few years is nobody even entertains the idea, can I get Carrigan from FaZe? He first of all, he founded Astralis and he is Danish. But we don't even entertain that idea because it seems so ludicrous on everyone's part. You know, it just wouldn't happen. So at this point in time, you were at some like Loki in Avengers 1 meme of like going to Snappy, and he's like, "You must be in some real trouble to come and ask me." Like, but that's actually what we're at. That's where we're at. If we're going to keep it Danish at this point in time, we really are. There's no one left. Because apparently even Huxley's not available. Like, that's another thing. I still don't know why you ever. Remember, I don't know why they ever DM'd that idea like publicly. Like, it was we didn't want Huxley. Like, why even say that?
Why would you burn the bridge?
Why even say it? I know, but it's so weird.
Spoiler: they have reverse GM themselves into a pit that they can never climb out of. That's literally what Astralis have done over the years, man.
Yeah,
outrageous.
It's absolutely insane when you think about the legacy that they had versus where they are now. And what happens next, because it is like I mentioned there, I think that there is a sponsorship deal that allows this to never happen. But now if they can't move into an English lineup, they're just screwed. So it may be the end of Astralis down the line. This is turning into a really positive episode. We've basically said that the two teams that came first and second aren't that great. They'll probably get annihilated by the bigger teams. Astralis is just dead men walking. We just don't know how long that's going to be. So let's move on to FaZe, because they're my favorite. I love them. I thought the Elige move was the best ever, and yet Cluj wasn't exactly a convincing performance for them, Thorin.
Thing about FaZe is when they lose, sometimes it's spiritually a win. It's what you call a moral victory.
See, we can't do this. I know we try. We try every episode.
Listen, you can't, and I've done it for 10 plus years. Watch me work. No, the sad thing is I do
this all the time.
I do actually think, unfortunately, this is an example of where, like, if you just weigh up both sides of it, there are moments in this tournament where FaZe is doing the things you want. And by the way, the integrated Elige way better than they have in past tournaments, which is why, if you notice, another thing about this event that people weren't buying into was people immediately did that HLTV show where they just showed that basically they've probably overly integrated Elige into the team, where it's like, Elige, you are aware the people allowed to go first as well, mate. Like, you're not literally just the bait for everyone else. Like, apparently he is for whatever reason. And now everyone who isn't called Carrigan's just been like, I'll just step back and let this guy go first. I don't know why that's a thing, because one of the best things about him joining was you thought to yourself, bro, it won't FaZe be the opposite team now? Instead of being really passive, they'll be like Broky, Rain, Elise, they'll be fucking super up tempo. They'll be running over the game. That's exactly what CS2 is, right? It's all wide swinging and rushing into the site, Eternal Fire style, and just fucking popping heads. But they've bizarrely done this thing where I almost feel like it's when you join in the honeymoon and you're the player joining, you just do whatever you can to accommodate all the people in the team, because first of all, you want to dispel any notions you were like a diva in your past team, or you had all these demands about what you wanted. Oh, I'll play any role. Remember, it's the twists when he first joined thing. At the end, when he left, here's what people don't know, because they left on such a great note. Oh, there was some like things of like maybe he didn't appreciate the way he was used in some of those roles, or maybe he'd been pushed to one side and other people had been elevated in the team, and he was the only one not getting the MVPs and all that jazz, and the only one who wasn't getting the crazy stats. So we'll see where that goes down the line. At the moment, if anything, Elise's been overly accommodating at this point in time. Meanwhile, actually, some of the others have been a little bit cynical. Normally, you meet them halfway in the honeymoon, for fuck's sake. But this, I mean, there's so many jokes I can obviously make with the whole honeymoon innuendo thing. I won't even do them on this episode. We'll keep those inside for now. But yeah, the point is, in this scenario, they're very selfish, aren't they? So I feel like it's still teething problems with FaZe for me. I don't think this is the full FaZe that's capped out. There's still some pieces you move around here. I feel, look, you've got what you want roughly out of Elige. Just temper that a little bit. Figure out some. By the way, the real question for FaZe, the one no one wants to have, it's not even the Rain conversation. It's the fucking Broky conversation, mate. That's the one that's getting worse and worse every tournament that goes by, because at this point in time, and this is really sad, it's gotten to the point where if he does something, I go like, oh, he's having a game today. Wait a minute, I have to tell my brain, this guy was like the MVP of like fucking, like, wasn't he the MVP of that major or something insane? Like all the years, oh no, it was Canavitse when they won that one. Like, this guy used to be like one of the absolute most cracked out impact players in CS, and now it's gotten to the point where you just kind of hope he does something in the game. So I think they've still got some questions to answer in this team, some real questions.
Dempz,
Oh,
how do
yeah,
you
I'll jump.
feel?
Yeah, I was just trying to be polite. Yeah, I agree. This isn't FaZe's final form with this iteration. They are starting to like adjust. I think part of the reason their Ancient collapsed in the playoffs, because by the way, Ancient was such a good map for FaZe and then completely collapsed in the playoffs towards the back end. It's because they actually swapped Frozen and Elige. They actually sent Frozen over to play the A site. So they are starting to like try and maybe give Elige a couple more spots that he's maybe a bit more comfortable with. Which is why I think there's these teething problems. I think it's exactly that. It's just teething problems. I really do. I think Thorin's point's exactly on the nose. Like broky, it's getting to the point now where it's a bit ridiculous and you're waiting for that broky tournament that he always has. Like broky's never been this mega consistent, like rock solid, stable AWPer. He's not that guy. Like he waits till the late round and then he runs around quick scoping people and doing crazy shit. That's always been broky's bag. That's what he does. But it's getting to the point now where it's just like over peaks or he's baiting too late in the round to have impact. And like you're waiting for that broky tournament where he does go nuts and puts up an MVP level and has mad impact. It's getting to the point where I'm looking at the watch like, when's it coming? When's it coming? So I think this FaZe come the major will be like a top, like a semi-finalist type of contender, I believe. Yeah, I just think they need a little bit more time. Especially, like I say, they haven't quite figured out how they're accommodating everyone yet, and they're still changing a few roles around and positions.
See, we all did do that. It doesn't matter that all those teams we just said a complete gash all got ahead of FaZe and beat them. FaZe is the real truth. Just
the real deal.
Fucking see through the matrix, you fucking normies.
So let's just look at this, right? And this always happens when FaZe comes up. So coming into PGL Cluj, FaZe was the out-and-out favorite to win the whole damn thing. It was expected. It was almost guaranteed. And now that the event is over, we have sat here and we've spoken about the winner of the event, and we've gone, they're meh. Whatever. We've spoken about the team that came second. They're meh. Whatever. Third place, they pretty much dead. Astralis is meh. FaZe comes fourth, the team that was supposed to win, and we're like, well, they just need more time.
Technically, that does fit their perfect career narrative because they only get hyped for the really big tournaments with the big teams. Man. So logically, all they thought after this match was, hey, coming third in an RMR is pretty good. What? This was the tournament? Oh, fucking hell, that was the playoffs. So listen, top four gets you out the RMR. What are we talking about?
This is when Dempz was like, I think they'll make like semi-finals at the major. I was like, this is FaZe, mates. They'll be in the finals.
Yeah,
that is what will happen.
Yeah, I meant that like you can be confident of that. Like you never count FaZe out. You never count them out, man. You'd be ridiculous to do so, especially with Elige, man. That guy is so good. And he's doing, like Thorin says, he's being mega accommodating, being super aggro, particularly on T sides. He's still fragging out.
Yeah.
He's still like 90 ADR, like 1 kill per round in round wins. Like, even though he's running out like an idiot sometimes, where it's like, Elige, bro, you're never winning that duel. And then he pops 2 heads. Like, I really believe in like the core of FaZe, particularly the rifle duo of Frozen Elige. I know everyone made those memes about like, oh, Rops, Twists, and broky could be together forever, but like Frozen Elige, you could eat out on that duo for like 2 years, at least.
I mean, one, I don't understand why we don't all have those diamond FaZe chains yet for being such fantastic supporters. They must be in the mail. Yeah, But two, do you think like, and this is the thing, we're talking about time. I really do think that once they kind of figure out where everyone fits and they move, like Thorin said, past the honeymoon stage, there's probably going to have to be an argument, a little bit of a debate. I think this team, I truly believe the Elige move means that this team moves up to a level where they're contesting with the likes of Vitality. Because broky on a good day is good. I think on a good
day is the key point there. I don't think, I mean, look, apart from that period in 2022 or whatever it was, where they were the best team in the world for like 6 months easily and won everything, they've always been like a little bit inconsistent. Like, can they be bothered to get out of bed for the shitty group stage games or like the lesser tournaments? Probably not. Like, they'll probably just sleep through their alarm and say, fuck it. But on their day, when the pressure is on in a semi-final with those big crowds, like you could never count them out. Like CadiaN elevates his calling. I think Rain and broky, less so these days, but like in general, they elevate their play as well. I think the only obviously with the addition of Elige is a bit different, but Frozen has been the only super rock solid piece for FaZe for a little while now, where like, you're going to get the fragging output out of Frozen. He's going to get 2 kills like when they're coming into his bomb site. Beyond that, like, on their day, for some reason they'll like bang Spirit out. But like if you catch them on an off day, they do look a little bit average. But that's fun. I think that's really fun.
No, I'm with you. In some ways, here's where you have to set the expectations. Copium, right? Who the fuck wants like a super team where everyone's all the best and you just bit contented with each other for who wins the MVP? No. All you need is a little bit of fun, a little bit of hijinks and excitement. That's right. You need everyone's favorite sitcom, 2.5 Men. So you've got Frozen, you've got Elise. Who's the half a man? Is it Rain today? Is it Broky today? You tell me.
Exactly.
That's the mystery of the show. Exactly.
That's the magic of FaZe. Okay, so now we've seen the first 3 big tournaments, if you like, of the year. So I've been breaking like the Europe into segments, and I feel like now we've seen everyone. Now we've got the major run, and then we hit the major.
Yeah.
Let's just recap, obviously, looking at not only Cluj, but we've got Cato, the Blast Bounty as well. How are we feeling moving in towards this like second half of the first season, if you like, in terms of where teams are sitting? Is it how you expected, or do you think Spirit and Vitality are just going to run way ahead of the pack?
And the most interesting team to me for this question is just Na'Vi, because what I want to see is this. Is it going to just be Spirit Vitality, which by the way, at the moment even looks like Vitality head-to-head as the awesome fucking matchup. Is it just going to be them? And then if you're Spirit, the question is, did someone on the other side of the bracket beat Vitality for you? Congrats, you win the tournament, you get everything. Or is it going to be, actually Na'Vi is going to sort of keep getting progressively better and they're going to come back to what they did last year and they're going to make everyone fucking work and make everyone sweat, and Blade's going to get deep in the tactics and figure out angles on how you play this and that and all the rest of it? Because if it isn't, I actually do feel like, in a way, CS is more exciting from positions 4 to 9 or whatever. Like, it seems like there's better play, there's better teams, but there's also a lot of flaws in those teams, a lot of flaws in those rosters. So it's way less stratified for me as to who's actually good. It's why I think, actually, like, for example, this tournament right here, where this could look really interesting is in 3 months, if actually MOUZ and Falcons are cooking and they're like 5th or 6th best teams in the world, suddenly this entire event will look different when you look back on the Wikipedia. And suddenly you'll even be doing the other way around and going, actually, you know what? Fair play to this team for getting a win off them there. And actually, Astralis was close against that. You'll start doing that. You'll do the retcon. So actually, that's the most interesting thing for me, is who's going to emerge from like the and the rest pack. Because it seems like the and the rest pack goes pretty deep. Almost every team there has like themselves the 2.5 men, like Liquid's like right there in the same sort of a position. You keep going down the squads. There's so many different teams. G2, by the way, you look at that on paper. If you have a MOUZ Monacy game and then suddenly Heavy God turns up, hey, that's just suddenly a game. But who can know? These teams could come 13th or they could come 5th. It's really hard to predict for me. So it's going to be exciting in terms of the turnover. Could be crazy. But I think it's really, really hard. Like, if you actually wanted to have a fun game, you should just get a load of analysts and just tell them all, like when we do the pick'ems for the major, you have to plump for your top 8 now in order. Tell me what they are, because I'd love to see, first of all, if there's any aggregate, if there's any even consensus. I feel like you could have some crazy answers there. Because actually, the other thing is, like I alluded about this event, the people who really got caught with their pants down absolutely was Eternal Fire. Like, they're the ones who it's like, bro, this even should have been an event you could win. Like, remember, you've already beaten FaZe this year. This should be an event. Like, you look at that bracket, you go, bro, don't we just win this whole event? To get banged out in the quarters, same with Mongols. I'm pretty sure everyone wants Eternal Fire and Mongols to be really good at CS. We want them to be with Spirit, Vitality, Na'Vi, and then we can have this fucking dope-ass tier 1. And then, you know what? If suddenly, and then it's FaZe and MOUZ and fucking below that, now we got a pretty fucking strong scene. But if these teams are going to keep turning up and just falling over on stage and getting a cream pie to the face, it's going to fucking somewhat affect us telling them they're the best teams in the world. It's one of those things I do hate. Funnily enough, there's another comparison I would draw to tennis here, Debs. I hate in tennis where someone at the smaller events does beat the big scalps and they get that ranking where it's like, in the world, you're like 6th in the world, but then you go and look and you get ready for the next Grand Slam, like, oh, let's see what he can. Wait, he's never even made a semi ever, and you're like, oh, fuck. And then they go out in like the round of 4. You're like, what even are these rankings? Look, I get you have to do it. You have to give people their status, but that doesn't feel like you're a real number 6, if you know what I mean. Like, number 6 to me is like, you can cook, you could beat number 3, and you could go to the finals or something. So that it has that feeling at the scene at the moment. Like, I feel like a lot of things, I have more questions than I have answers after the first 3 tournaments, if that's true.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think that analogy perfectly works for the Mongols being 3rd or whatever in Valve's global ranking. The VRS is a bit like that, with the kind of a bit scuffed with like prize money count for so much and stuff. Yeah, I think the scene is, there's a clear top 2, I think, where it's Spirit and Vitality, and probably Vitality 1, Spirit 2. After that, question marks around Na'Vi. I think we need to like see them a couple more tournaments before we can make a final judgment. And then after that, it is a hot mess, but like a really fun hot mess. There's a lot of teams I'm like cautiously optimistic for. I know I've spent the whole like podcast episode shitting on everyone except FaZe, but I like the look of MOUZ in particular. I'm excited to see what they can do. I'm excited to see if Dexter can keep up for Falcons. Like Astralis, no, okay, I'm just down on them. But like it's fun. There's a lot of interesting teams. There's a lot of fun. Like, I'm excited. I'm excited for the rest of the year, especially building up to the major where we're going to start to see teams looking to peak rather than just this kind of like, we're feeling things out at the start of the season. This is where I think it gets really interesting and fun to try and project forwards and see like who the best teams really are.
I'll give you the spicy one, Tech Girl. Here's what no one's even prepared for. And you have to, after this tournament, think it's not impossible anymore. What on earth will people do if Falcons make top 8 at the major? What on earth will people do? There will be so many tears shed on that day. And also, if that happens, that's when if you're NiKo, you're like, right, pull out the Rolodex. It's time we got that 5th player. You know what I mean? That's when it just happens, boys. That's when the evil empire is completed.
The blank check gets rolled out.
I was about to say, can you imagine they make top 8? Then the Falcons organization is going to be like, it was always NiKo. That's what we needed. And NiKo will demand 7 private
the keys
jets.
to the castle.
They'll kick out Cristiano Ronaldo out of the mansion they bought him and give it to NiKo.
No, the joke is, you know, if you're in Hollywood, you just go around going, hey, here's my card, give me a call or whatever. Instead of that, they'll just be handing out blank checks like all the HLTV top 20 players. Like, hey, listen, sign it. If you can get it in by Monday, first one to do it gets in the team. So, you know, like, listen, put out as many zeros you want on there. Who gives a fuck, you know? Exactly. Yeah, we're Falcons. Welcome.
We're Falcons. There are a stack of people on the HLTV forums that will be having a small heart attack just even thinking about that. So there you go.
Aneurysm.
You can tell us what you think about the season and what's coming up. And we'll be back soon with another episode.